So I'm breaking down the real numbers, the utilities, groceries, gas, property taxes, entertainment, and housing. So you know exactly what to expect when it comes to the cost of living here in Gainesville, Florida. Now, before we dive into housing, which is usually the biggest expense for families moving here, let's talk about the basics that you'll be paying every single month. On average, Gainesville families spend about $250 a month on electricity alone. Now keep in mind, Florida summers are hot and humid, so your AC will likely be running nonstop for several months. Winter bills drop quite a bit, but those summer months definitely drive up the average. For example, we spend about $350 per month on electricity. Now that's a family of five, about 2,500 square feet, and the AC stays around 75 degrees. If you get slightly outside of Gainesville, you could end up with Clay Electric, and that would be lower electricity bills monthly. Water and sewer typically come in around $100 per month, depending on usage and household size. This one can vary a lot if you're doing a ton of laundry or trying to keep the grass green and watering it daily. If that's the case, it could bump up over 200, maybe even more every single month. Now, when it comes to internet providers, Gainesville finally has more options than just Cox Cable. We were paying about $120 a month getting 1 gigabyte from Cox Cable. Then we switched over recently to IQ Fiber. That costs about $95 a month and getting 2 gigabytes. Then you've got your typical streaming services, and all in, most families are going to spend somewhere between $400 and $500 a month just for the basic power, water, trash, and internet. That's before we start adding in groceries, gas, and housing, which we'll cover later. So while the utilities aren't the single biggest item in your budget, they do definitely add up. Now, as we dive into these numbers, I do want to point out something. Cost of living is obviously going to be pretty personal, and it's also going to be relative. If you're moving to Gainesville from a place like LA, New York, or Miami, a lot of these numbers may feel kind of low. But if you're coming from a smaller town or you've lived here in Gainesville for a while, you've definitely felt the increase over the years. And beyond that, it is going to be personal. We have friends who spend significantly less than we do, and then we've got others who spend way more. So as I go through these categories, think about how it compares to your lifestyle and what you're used to paying, not just the raw numbers. All right, so let's move on to groceries and food, which is another major monthly expense for families here in Gainesville. For a typical family of four or five, groceries usually land somewhere between $800 and $1,200 a month, depending on where you're shopping and how much you're eating. Chains like Publix and Trader Joe's are popular, but we also have Aldi's, Walmart, and Sam's Club. To give you an idea of some basic grocery prices, what they look like here in Gainesville right now, a gallon of milk is about $4.20, a dozen eggs about $2.50, chicken breast is roughly $3.50 a pound, and then ground beef is about $5 a pound. Fresh produce can vary seasonally, but you'll find most of those prices are pretty much in line with the national average. For our family, we usually budget closer to about $1,400 a month. With three growing boys all in sports and activities, they're eating nonstop. Eating out is another piece to consider. A fast casual meal like Chipotle or Chick-fil-A usually costs about $12 to $15 a person, and a sit-down dinner for a family of five can easily run over $100 before the tip. So with groceries and dining out together, that can definitely push families over $1,200 a month pretty quickly. For most families relocating to this area, this food budget is where you'll want to set some realistic numbers early on. Now, groceries are one of those fixed, predictable expenses. That's what I call and put in budget A. But later in the video, I'll share with you budget B costs, and those are what usually catch families by surprise. Next, let's talk about transportation, because how much you drive here plays a big role in your monthly cost. Gainesville transportation is going to be a bit different than those bigger cities. We don't have a subway system or light rail. Gainesville does have a bus line, but most people who actually ride the bus are either students at the University of Florida or they're employees working on campus. For most families, the bus just isn't a practical option. That means you'll need at least one car to be getting around town. Typically, gas in Gainesville is pretty close to the national average, maybe slightly lower. Right now, we're right around $3. And again, that falls in line with most areas. Car insurance, on the other hand, will be slightly more expensive than the national average. For a typical family policy, expect to pay somewhere between $150 and $200 per month per vehicle, depending on your driving history and coverage. We've got 3 vehicles on our policy, and it's just under $500 a month. Now, if you're new to the channel, my name is Donavan Arnold, and I was born and raised in Gainesville. I've been helping people buy and sell homes here for more than a decade. So if you're thinking about moving to the area or just have some questions, feel free to give me a call, shoot me a text, or send me an email. I'm happy to help any way I can. Now let's talk about property taxes and homeowners insurance. Here in Gainesville, the effective property tax rate averages about 1.5% of your home's value. To put that in perspective, on a home worth $300,000, you're looking at roughly around $4,500 a year. And then for a $400,000 home, that could jump up closer to $6,000 a year. But keep in mind, that's just the ad valorem portion, which is based on your home value. On top of that, every homeowner pays some flat fees for things like fire services, solid waste, and stormwater. Those can add up and be roughly another $1,000 on top of the tax bill. Florida does have homestead exemption, which can lower your taxable value and save you a chunk of money each year if this is going to be your primary residence. So that's definitely something to take advantage of if you're buying here in town. Then there's homeowners insurance. Florida's insurance rates are some of the highest in the country because of hurricanes. And while Gainesville is inland and not as risky as the coast, you'll still see slightly higher premiums than many other states. Depending on the age and condition of the home, insurance here can range anywhere from about $2,000 to $4,000 a year. All right, so let's talk about entertainment, lifestyle, and then a quick note on childcare, since that's going to be one of the big categories for many families relocating here. This is going to be one of those items that are relative. If you'd like to go out, there are a wide range of options. Like I mentioned earlier, dining out, casual spots, $12 to $15. But then if you're going to go to a sit-down dinner with the whole family, 4 or 5 people, you're definitely going to get up close to $150. A movie ticket will run you about $12 to $15, and then you add in snacks, and our family of 5 definitely can't get in and out of the theater without spending $100. If you've got kids in sports or activities, definitely plan on budgeting extra. Whether it's soccer, baseball, gymnastics, or music lessons, most families here will end up spending a few $100s every single month on that stuff. For example, we just signed up for flag football. That's $125 per season. And then we're in travel baseball. Don't get me started, but just to be on the team and the jerseys is easily $2,000 a season. Memberships and activities are another area to think about. Gyms here will range from about $20 to $60 a month. Then if we want to get into the childcare, because again, that's going to be one of those big expenses, this can range a lot, but most of the daycares I see for a baby room will cost about $1,200 to $1,400 a month. And then for the older kids, about $700 to $1,000 per month. Now, definitely keep in mind, most of the daycares around here will fill up fast and have a waiting list. So if you're planning on relocating to the area, start doing the research there as soon as possible and get on some of those waiting lists. All right, so before we dive into the housing cost, the biggest line item, let's go ahead and talk about that budget B. These are the costs that you don't see in these typical breakdowns, but they definitely matter when you're trying to figure out what it's really going to cost to live here. For example, last month, our microwave went out. A few weeks prior to that, our dog was sick and ran up a vet bill. Then summers are always more expensive because of those camps and trips. Next, we're headed out of town to go visit a friend who recently had a baby. So budget B is going to be all of those life expenses that pop up, but they don't typically make it onto the spreadsheet. But even bigger than that, the one cost that shapes everything else is going to be housing. Where you live and what you pay will ultimately decide your true cost of living here in Gainesville. Let's start with renting. As of mid-2025, the average rent across Gainesville is about $1,500 a month. A 1-bedroom runs about $1,250, a 2-bedroom $1,450, and then a 3-bedroom single-family home will usually be between $1,800 and $2,200, depending on the location and amenities. Now, if you're considering buying a home, the median home price in Gainesville right now is right about $360,000. With 10% down on a 30-year loan and an interest rate of roughly 6.35, your principal payment and interest will come out to just over $2,000 per month. But that's just the starting point. On a $360,000 home, property taxes will run right about $5,800, and then homeowners insurance probably expect around $2,000, probably a little bit more every single year. So once you add all of that up together, your real monthly cost could be closer to $2,800 per month on a medium priced home here. Then if you're in an HOA, you can add another $100, maybe $200 a month to that. For homes in the $450,000 to $500,000 range, it's not uncommon for that total monthly housing budget to cross somewhere between $3,400 and $3,900 per month. And that's going to be a big difference between renting, which is why the housing decision carries so much weight for your overall cost of living. While rent and mortgage payments may look similar at first glance, owning a home includes all of those extra costs like property taxes, insurance, and maintenance. Renting typically means fewer responsibilities, but then also you're not building up that equity year over year. And with your largest monthly expense being housing, you'd want to love where you live. So if you want to learn more about the different neighborhoods that Gainesville has to offer, you'll want to watch this video where I drive you around town and show you exactly what to expect when you're moving to Gainesville.